Miraculous transformation. Joseph's incredible journey from slave to governor in God's divine plan, in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, amidst the dusty hills of Canaan. There was a young man named Joseph, the favored son of Jacob. His mother, Rachel, held a special place in Jacob's heart, and thus Joseph was adorned with a richly ornamented coat, a vibrant symbol of his father's love, casting a long shadow of jealousy upon his 10 brothers. Envy spiraled through their hearts like a serpent, waiting for the opportune moment to strike point. One fateful morning, Joseph, fueled by youthful exuberance, shared a divine revelation that ignited the flames of adversity. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf rose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. For Joseph, these dreams were not mere whims but glimpses of a glorious future through God's hand. Yet for his brothers, they festered anger and resentment. Shall you indeed reign over us? They scoffed, plotting betrayal in their hearts. Under the guise of concern, the brothers led Joseph to a distant place. There, they cast him into a deep pit, their hearts hardened as stone. But as fate would have it, they later encountered a caravan of Ishmaelites bound for Egypt. With a weighty heart, they sold him, an innocent boy thrust into the life of a slave, a grim cloak enveloping his dreams. Arriving in Egypt, Joseph found himself in the house of Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guards. He worked diligently, showcasing his unwavering integrity, and found favor in Potiphar's eyes. Joseph's surroundings were rich with the sense of spiced meats and the laughter of those who served. Yet he remained steadfast. His focus on faith and belief in God's plan for him still flickered like a candle in the night. But temptation lurked within the palace walls. Potiphar's wife, captivated by Joseph's beauty, desired him, and when spurned, she unleashed false accusations, bringing darkness upon him once more. Innocence ripped away, he was cast into the cold confines of a prison. Yet, in that bleak cell, memories of divine promises blossomed like flowers in the desert. Do not interpretations belong to God? Joseph proclaimed, sharing hope with fellow prisoners through divinely inspired dream interpretations. 2 long years drifted by in silence and shadows. But God was weaving a masterful tapestry hidden from human eyes. Meanwhile, Pharaoh's dreams troubled his spirit, visions of fat cows being consumed by lean ones, and plentiful grain devoured by blighted stalks. The cupbearer, remembering Joseph's gift, mentioned him to Pharaoh, leading to a sacred meeting that would shift the sands of destiny. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Stood before Pharaoh, Joseph interpreted the dreams, revealing the impending famine that would sweep across Canaan. Pharaoh placed Joseph over all of Egypt, adorning him with fine robes and a gold chain, a stark contrast to the chains he once bore. But as drought ravaged the land, the past re-emerged like a haunting specter. His brothers, desperate for grain, ventured to Egypt. Unbeknownst to them, the one whom they betrayed now held their fate within his hands as he stood before them. Regal and commanding, Joseph's heart wrestled with the emotions of betrayal and the possibility of forgiveness. What will be their fate? He pondered, as unspoken words hung heavy in the air, stirring anticipation for the next chapter of God's miraculous story. As the sun rose high above the land of Egypt, gilding the golden grains waiting to be harvested, the air was thick with tension. Joseph, in his finery, gazed upon the faces of those who once cast him away. For years, his heart had been a vessel of pain. Yet now, it was filled with the power of God, and he initiated the encounter that would alter their destinies. Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. The scriptures tell us, an echo of immense sorrow mingled with a flicker of hope stirred within him. Amidst the throng of seekers yearning for sustenance, There were the same faces that had betrayed him, yet they stood now humble and broken. He remembered the pit, the shackles, and the desolation of his youth, all dealt by them. With a voice that commanded respect yet concealed the storm within, Joseph spoke. You have come to buy food. You are spies. You have come to observe the nakedness of the land. Fear gripped the hearts of his brothers as they looked upon the governor of all Egypt. Their benevolent frame now turned harsh. This was a test not merely of their honesty but of the transformation that had taken place within them and him. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men. They protested, their voices quivering. Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. The mention of Benjamin stirred within Joseph a deeper anguish, like a torrent of forgotten memories crashing upon the shores of his heart. He longed for his brother, the one who had not plotted against him, but who shared his lineage of love and rejection. You will not see my face unless your youngest brother comes, he commanded, sealing their fate with a decree that would test their hearts further and their return to Canaan. The brothers bore a heavy load of grain but a heavier burden of guilt. The shadows of their deeds loomed over them as they recounted the past beneath the gaze of their father. What is this that God has done to us? They lamented, for in their tale of despair, the echoes of their actions rang loud. But God was stirring the hearts of all involved. He was uniting the threads of their lives, weaving a divine purpose from the remnants of human failure. While the brothers debated their fate, Joseph returned to Egypt, consumed by a desire to see Benjamin, yet wrestling with the sharp edges of betrayal. Could he ever forgive? Could he embrace the very blood that had once been part of the conspiratorial murderous plot? Days turned into weeks, seasons shifted from harvest to emptiness, and the famine swept across the land. As the brothers returned with Benjamin under the guise of necessity, a surreal suspense cloaked the air. Joseph prepared a feast, the scales of revelation tipping, as he sought to uncover their true hearts. When the moment came, and Benjamin stood before him, Joseph could no longer restrain his tears. I am Joseph. Is my father yet alive? His words broke forth, laden with the weight of anguish and the sweetness of reunion, revealing to the brothers that he was indeed the one they had wronged. But how would they respond? Would they flinch at the depth of their iniquity? Would they flee in fear of divine retribution? With bated breath, the orchestration of God's plan hung delicately in the balance. For even in moments of greatest despair, God's grace calls forth forgiveness, restoration, and a good that was promised long ago. The time was at hand for the true essence of brotherhood to emerge from the ashes of betrayal, paving the way for a nation to rise through the echoes of Joseph's trials. The heart of divine providence beckoned for revelation. Will they choose to extend mercy, or allow the weight of their sins to define them? The soul of this story awaited a climax that would change not only them but an entire lineage. What awaited Joseph in the face of these decisions? Could the past be reconciled with the present under the sovereign gaze of the Almighty? The tapestry of God's divine orchestration was yet to be unraveled, waiting to spill forth the blessings born from forgiveness and faithfulness. And Joseph, weeping, could no longer contain the torrent of emotions that surged within him. The room trembled under the weight of his revelation. The brothers, shock etching their faces, stood frozen, as if the air had left their lungs. I am Joseph, he said again, his voice a blend of anguish and love, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Fear enveloped them, and they were unable to utter a word, their hearts gripped by the shadows of their guilt, for they knew their crime. In that moment, they were not merely in the presence of an ancient wind of fate but faced with the very reality of their transgressions laid bare. Guilt gnawed at their souls, yet in Joseph's gaze, they glimpsed a flicker of grace. Do not be distressed, nor angry with yourselves for selling me here, Joseph spoke, his heart guided by the Spirit. For God sent me before you to preserve life. The famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors." His words echoed like a clarion call, compelling his brothers to see beyond their guilt into the depths of divine providence. They began to process the enormity of what was unfolding, as fear melted into an understanding that God had been weaving a tapestry of salvation amidst their sins. Can one grasp the majesty of God's sovereign plans, even through human folly? Then Joseph fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his. In this embrace of reunion, they exchanged the fears of the past for a new bond of brotherhood, rooted in forgiveness. The embrace was not just for them, but a profound declaration. The Lord can restore what was lost, and heal that which was broken. Joseph summoned his stewards to prepare provisions for the entire family. "Go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks and your herds and all that you have.'" At these words, fear was transformed into hope. How often does God prepare a way for the weary traveler, even through the valleys of their own making? What might lie ahead for them in this foreign land? With the brothers laden with supplies and the promise of love renewed, they journeyed back to Canaan, their hearts heavy with the weight of this miraculous encounter. Little did they know, the trials of Egypt would forge a new identity, uniting them as a family once estranged, now bound by the grace of restoration. As Jacob, their father, heard the news, the joy mingled with disbelief. "Is it possible?" he wondered. "My son who was lost has found a place of prominence? Surely, God's hand is upon this." And so, they made their way to Egypt, guided by hope and the whisper of redemption. Each step forward a testament to the lessons of life, the mercy of God, and the renewal of faith. But even as they journeyed, another mystery loomed ahead. Would they recognize the enduring grace that had transformed Joseph? And would they embrace the new covenant God was knitting for them as a chosen family? The path forward, obscured yet illuminated by divine intent, beckoned them closer to the grand narrative of God's sovereign plan, wherein the fate of nations would rest upon their shoulders even as the promise of a future lives in the hearts of those willing to believe. And Joseph's brothers returned to their father Jacob in Canaan, their hearts racing with both joy and trepidation. As they approached their father's tent, the message they bore was heavy with the weight of its truth. "Father," they began with trembling voices, "Joseph is alive. He is ruler over all the land of Egypt." Jacob's heart stood still, as if caught in a web of disbelief. "Is it true?" he replied, searching their faces for any sign of deceit. The glimmer of their tear-filled eyes spoke louder than words. "It cannot be. My son, whom I mourned, has risen to such heights?" The spirit of our father Jacob revived, they proclaimed, relaying Joseph's own words. "He has sent for you, telling you to come down to Egypt, where you will live and flourish." As the truth began to take root, Jacob's heart swelled with hope. He had thought Joseph lost forever. How could it be that his son not only survived but thrived? "I will go," he declared, "to see my son before I die." In this moment, he felt the tender embrace of divine promise, even as the heavy burdens of past sorrow lifted with provisions laden upon wagons. Jacob and his family set forth toward Egypt, their path illuminated by the promise of reunion and restoration. As they traveled, Jacob offered sacrifices to God at Beersheba, calling upon the name of the Lord. "O God of my father Isaac, let your presence go with me, for I am but dust and ashes." In the night the Lord spoke to Jacob in a vision, saying, "Jacob, Jacob." And he answered, "Here I am." God reassured him, saying, "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you, and I will also surely bring you up again." The assurance ignited within Jacob a flame of faith that would guide him forth. Arriving in Egypt, Joseph harnessed his joy and rushed to meet his father. When he saw him, he fell upon his neck, weeping, and kissed him repeatedly. The reunion was a sacred moment, burdened with years of separation and joy resurrected. "Now I may die," Jacob said, overwhelmed, "for I have seen your face, and it is as if I have seen the face of God." Their hearts converged in a bond unbreakable, the kind that surpasses time and hardship. Joseph led his family into the land of Goshen, securing their lives and ensuring their needs were met. He presented them to Pharaoh, who welcomed them. The lands of Egypt are before you. Choose the finest of the land, for your kindred may dwell in Goshen, and let your shepherds be caretakers of my herd. The family thrived, and though they had come burdened with a past of regret, in Egypt, they found not just refuge, but the setting for God's purpose to unfold. Generations would spring from their loins, blessings cascading from the faithfulness of God. Yet, even as their future shimmered before them, an unspoken weight loomed. Jacob's days grew weary, and Joseph understood that the winds of change would soon shift again. The very redemption that awaited them would be tested as God's plan continued to unfold. That I end this holy communion of family. Echoes of their journey still reverberated how God had turned their missteps into milestones, their separation into a reunion that would redefine their legacy. But in the shadow of blessing, questions stirred. How would the people of Israel fare in the land of Egypt? Would they cling to the faith of their fathers amidst the lure of foreign ways? What trials lay ahead that would sharpen their resolve and strengthen the ties binding them together? The tapestry of God's sovereign plan drew them ever deeper into a greater narrative, one that would shape nations and fulfill divine promises, a journey not merely of survival but of covenantal destiny. What awaited them at the end of this winding path? God's unfathomable wisdom beckoned, inviting them to lean into the mystery of his purpose. And it came to pass that Joseph, knowing the turmoil stirred in the hearts of his brothers, called for them to gather. "Come close to me," he said, as the weight of his authority softened into a welcoming embrace. His brothers, uncertain, approached, hearts heavy with past transgressions and guilt. "Do not fear," Joseph continued, his voice steady yet filled with compassion. "What you intended for evil against me, God meant for good, to bring about this very moment." These words pierced through the shadows of their regret, casting a hopeful light upon their future. Thus, the family of Jacob settled in the land of Goshen, prospering abundantly. Their flocks increased, and their numbers grew as the sands upon the seashore. They were blessed by the Lord, who had promised that through Jacob, a great nation would arise. Yet, amidst this flourishing, a foreboding whisper of change lingered in the air as the years rolled on. Jacob grew frail, and the father's heart became burdened with the thoughts of what lay ahead for his children. He summoned Joseph, saying, "Swear unto me that you will bury me not in Egypt, but in the land of my fathers." Joseph, honoring his father, vowed, "I will do as you have said." Yet, unbeknownst to them, the sands of time were shifting, and the favor they enjoyed in Egypt would not remain untested. The new Pharaoh rose, one who did not know Joseph and saw not the blessing that the family brought to the land. Fearful of their increasing numbers, he spoke to his people. "Behold, the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply and join our enemies against us." Thus, the foundations of Israel's suffering were laid. Harsh oppression followed, and the Israelites were made to serve with rigor. Their cries ascended like smoke before the Lord, echoing the injustices they suffered. The burden was heavy, yet it was in the depths of their despair that God stirred the hearts of his people. For even in bondage, he was orchestrating a great deliverance. And in this land, amid the trials, the promise of a great nation began to take root. The faith of their forefathers began to awaken within them, drawing them together in community, fostering their resilience against fear and oppression. The sons and daughters of Jacob found strength in the God of their father, praying with hearts aligned to his will. But deep in the tapestry of their suffering lay threads of divine purpose. For the time was drawing near when God would raise a deliverer. In the quiet of night, the Lord spoke to a humble Hebrew woman. A descendant of the blessed lineage Moses would be born, a vessel chosen to lead his people into freedom. Through pain and suffering, God prepared his plan, weaving it into the very fabric of their existence. Would they be ready to embrace the journey ahead? As the cries of Israel were heard in the heavens, a glimmer of hope sparked within the promise of divine intervention. The future loomed with both peril and promise. For in the heart of Egypt, where oppression thrived, God was about to unveil his might, and a nation was to emerge from the ashes of slavery, bound by the covenant made with their forefathers, and thus, the stage was set for the next unfolding of his glorious plan. What liberation would the Lord bring through his chosen servant, and how would his people respond to the call? The divine mystery deepened. Rooted in the unwavering faithfulness of God, the promise was alive, still echoing through generations yet to come. And it came to pass that, in the land of Goshen, the days grew darker for the children of Israel. As the yoke of oppression tightened, the burdens upon them increased manifold, and their cries rose up to God like the smoke of a furnace. They toiled under the harsh commands of their masters, and their spirits became weary from the weight of servitude. Yet, in the midst of their anguish, the heart of God turned toward them, for he had not forgotten his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Lord listened to their supplications and took notice of their plight, remembering the promise of a great nation. In this time of distress, he began to stir the hearts of his people, igniting a flame of hope that they would one day be free. Among the Hebrew women, there lived one named Jochebed. She bore a son, beautiful in God's sight, a gift from the heavens. As the edict of Pharaoh commanded the deaths of all male children, she hid her son for 3 months, unwavering in her faith. When she could hide him no longer, she made a basket of bulrushes, waterproofed it with tar and pitch, and placed the child within. She set the basket among the reeds by the riverbank, entrusting her beloved son to the waters of fate, and Miriam, the sister of the child, stood at a distance to observe what would happen, her heart beating with anxiety and prayer. As fate would have it, Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe in the river. She spotted the basket hidden among the reeds and sent her maidens to fetch it. When she opened it and beheld the crying infant, her heart was moved with compassion. "This is one of the Hebrew children," she declared, feeling the weight of destiny fall upon her. Miriam, emboldened by the Spirit, approached the princess and offered, "Shall I go and call a nurse of the Hebrews that she may nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter agreed, and in a divine twist, Miriam brought Jochebed, who nursed her own son, whom she named Moses, which means drawn out of the water. As Moses grew, he became aware of the suffering of his people and the injustice that surrounded them. The convictions of his heart were not lost, for he was marked by God's plan. One day, witnessing an Egyptian strike a Hebrew, righteous anger seized him, and he intervened, killing the Egyptian and hiding his body in the sand. But the act brought forth a new danger, for news of his transgression spread, and Pharaoh sought to kill him. Fleeing to the land of Midian, Moses found refuge but also solitude. There, he learned the ways of a shepherd, tending flocks while wrestling with the ghosts of his past. Yet even in Midian, God was preparing his heart, shaping him for the weighty task ahead, the deliverance of his people. And it came to pass, after many days, that the Lord appeared to Moses in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush that burned yet was not consumed. "Moses, Moses," called the voice of the Lord. And Moses said, "Here I am." The Lord spoke, revealing his sovereign purpose, a purpose that would free Israel from bondage and lead them into the land of promise. That as the flames flickered and the holy ground beckoned, Moses trembled, sensing the gravity of God's call. For the cries of Israel had reached the heavens, and God's time for deliverance was at hand. What would Moses say when the Lord called him to confront Pharaoh? Would he rise to the occasion, or would he falter before the might of the sovereign? In that moment, as uncertainty loomed, the mystery of God's plan deepened further. For what they did not yet understand was that in Moses lay the heart of a leader destined to wield the authority of God, through whom an entire nation would be set free. The showdown between oppressor and liberator was about to unfold, the story of redemption igniting with divine fervor, and the promise echoed in the hearts of the Israelites, compelling them to trust in their God who never forgets. But Moses, standing on the threshold of destiny, trembled in the presence of the Almighty. As the Lord continued to speak, he commanded, "Go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." The weight of these words pressed heavily upon Moses' heart, and a flurry of uncertainty engulfed him. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" he protested, his voice trembling. "And what shall I say to the children of Israel? They will not believe me nor heed my voice." God, in his infinite patience and wisdom, countered, "I will be with you, and this shall be a sign that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain." Yet Moses, still filled with doubt, asked, "But if they ask me what your name is, what shall I say?" The Lord replied, "I am who I am. Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you." Moses remained hesitant, arguing, "O Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant. But I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." But the Lord's resolve did not waver. "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall say." As the flames of the burning bush danced and crackled, the depth of God's purpose enveloped Moses. His heart began to stir with a yearning for the freedom of his people, for the chains of bondage weighed heavily upon him even still. Yet, apprehension and insecurity restrained him like a long, dark shadow. Such was the burden of leadership, but God's plan was greater than fear. The tension hung thick in the air as Moses finally conceded, saying, "O my Lord, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send." The anger of the Lord kindled against Moses, yet his compassion prevailed. He provided a solution. "Is not Aaron your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. I will be with your mouth and with his mouth." In this divine moment, God assured Moses that his plan would not be thwarted by human limitations. A partnership was formed, and thus Moses was to bear the mantle of responsibility, yet not alone. With a renewed spirit, he gathered his courage and returned to Midian, preparing to face the daunting task before him as Moses ventured forth. The cries of Israel still echoed in his heart, demanding justice and deliverance. He understood now that his journey was a sacred one, marked by the whims of heaven and the pulse of a suffering people. With each step toward his brother Aaron, the stakes ascended higher. The destiny of a nation hung in the balance, woven through the fibers of divine intervention. And so, as the sun began to rise over Midian, illuminating a path fraught with uncertainty and hope, the air trembled with anticipation. For in Moses' reluctant acceptance lay the inception of a monumental confrontation. The clash of divine purpose and human fragility would soon be revealed, igniting the sovereign narrative of liberation and fulfilling the promise of God. Little did they know that this divine appointment was but the beginning of a journey that would lead through the waters of the Red Sea and into the heart of the wilderness, an exodus destined to forge a covenant with a sovereign God. The time for God's mighty hand to act was drawing near, beckoning them to trust in his unfathomable plans, for deliverance was at the door. When Moses approached Mount Horeb, his heart raced with trepidation and anticipation. The echoes of God's voice still resonated in his spirit, fueling his journey back to his people. He felt the weight of holy purpose pressing upon him, urging him to fulfill the call that had been laid upon his life. As he neared Midian, he encountered the familiar landscape where he had tended sheep and felt the solitude of the desert. Yet now, the same land was imbued with the fervor of destiny. He recalled the bitter cries of his brethren, the Israelites laboring under the oppressive hand of Pharaoh. Each memory compelled him toward action, yet fear threatened to seize him once more. Moses found Aaron, his brother, as God had foretold. Upon seeing Moses, Aaron's face lit with joy, a spark of divine appointment igniting their reunion. "Moses, you have returned," Aaron exclaimed, embracing him warmly. With a heart full of urgency, Moses recounted the Lord's words, sharing the vision that had captured his spirit like fire. "The God of our fathers has sent me to you," he proclaimed, "that we may lead the children of Israel out of their bondage." Even with all the zeal and strength of his declaration, doubt still flickered in Moses' heart. "But what if they do not believe us? What if they do not heed our voice?" Aaron, charged with faith, replied, "The Lord will confirm his message." As they spoke, the Spirit of God stirred within them both, enveloping them with assurance that the plan was indeed God's own. Daring to strengthen their resolve, Moses began to recount the signs God would perform. The staff that would become a serpent, the leper's hand that would be made whole again. Each sign anointed the brothers with hope, planting seeds of faith in their mission. These miracles will testify of our God and his power, Moses declared, his certainty slowly overshadowing his fears. Together, they prepared to gather the elders of Israel, a diverse assembly of weary souls burdened by generations of oppression. Their hearts beat like drums of war as they approached, the air thick with anticipation. As Moses began to share God's command, the weight of his responsibility surged through him. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has seen our affliction and has intervened. He will bring us out of the land of Egypt into a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders shifted their gaze between Moses and Aaron, skepticism mingling with curiosity. But as soon as Moses displayed the signs God had given him, a serpent coiling and slithering away, the miraculous healing of his leprous hand, the elders began to see beyond their burdens and into the light of deliverance. The signs were unmistakable, emboldened by the anointing of the Almighty. The elders, moved profoundly, responded, "Let us go. Let us be delivered from this bondage." Their voices crescendoed, hope igniting flames in their hearts. Yet amidst their growing faith, the shadows of Egypt loomed. To confront Pharaoh would be to stride into the lioness den, a sovereign power deafened by pride and steeped in cruelty. As Moses returned home after the gathering, he could feel the tension winding tighter around him like a serpent. Would Pharaoh relent? Would God truly deliver his people? The uncertainty of the journey ahead weighed upon him. But there stood a promise unwavering: a sovereign God had orchestrated their fate. And again, as he looked toward the night sky, he felt the pressing need to seek the Lord in prayer, awaiting clarity in the depths of the divine mystery. For was it not in the heart of adversity that faith is forged? The enemy was preparing, yet so was God. Little did they realize, a divine confrontation awaited in the hallowed halls of Egypt, a battle not just for the bodies of men, but for their very souls. The time was drawing near when God would display his glory and assert his sovereign rule over all creation. The Exodus was set in motion, and the promise of deliverance loomed on the horizon, intertwining with the heartbeats of Israel. As the sun broke over the horizon, casting golden rays upon the land, Moses felt a stirring within his heart. It was as if the very breath of God was sweeping across his spirit, preparing him for that which lay ahead. The Lord will indeed deliver his people, he murmured to himself, gathering the determination that coursed through him. He had received the commission of the Almighty, and now was not the time to falter. With Aaron at his side, they set out for Egypt, the weight of their mission pressing like a yoke upon their shoulders. The road was long, and the trials yet to come loomed like shadowy giants. Yet God had not abandoned his chosen. As they approached the grand city of Egypt, a land ruled by an iron fist, fear coiled around their hearts. Moses turned to Aaron. "What if Pharaoh does not heed our command? What if he laughs at us?" "But remember," Aaron replied, "the signs God has bestowed upon us are for this very purpose. They will bear witness to the truth of our testimony." His eyes shone with a fierce light, igniting a spark of faith in Moses' heart even amidst uncertainty. Upon their arrival, they were met with towering structures and bustling crowds, voices of the Israelites echoing with cries of despair. With every step closer, Moses' heart quickened, the weight of destiny pressing upon him. They sought audience with Pharaoh, knowing the confrontation would shake the very foundations of Egypt. That as they entered the presence of the ruler, Moses felt the gravity of the moment. The throne room was filled with opulence and authority, yet within him surged the power of the living God. "O Pharaoh," he declared, his voice steady, "thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh, impervious and proud, looked upon Moses with disdain. "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? I know not the Lord, nor will I let Israel go." His laughter was like a jagged blade, cutting through the hope that hung in the air. Yet Moses stood firm, undeterred. "The God of our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has sent us. By his mighty hand, signs and wonders shall be performed among you." He stretched out his rod before Pharaoh, the very staff that had become a serpent on the mountain, ready to display the power of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not relent. "You have but a few days to rest. Take your burdens with you, for I will not allow you to go." Each refusal stoked the flames of divine purpose within Moses. He turned back to the Israelites, who awaited word with hope mingled with trepidation. "Do not lose heart," he called to them, "for we shall see the hand of God mighty in our deliverance." As they gathered in disbelief, swirling whispers filled the air. Is this the promise of liberty? Will he truly act on our behalf? The Israelites were caught between faith and fear as the shadow of Pharaoh lay heavy upon them. That night, Moses sought the Lord once more, the cries of his people ringing in his ears. "O Lord," he prayed, "you are faithful to your promises. Show us your glory. Deliver us, I beseech you." In the sacred silence that followed, a still small voice spoke into the depths of his spirit. "I will stretch out my hand with wonders, and they will know that I am the Lord." With renewed strength, Moses emerged under the cover of night, resolved to witness the unfolding of God's sovereign plan. Unbeknownst to him, the stage was being set for the great confrontation between heaven and earth, a divine showdown where God would prove his might, and the hearts of his people would be transformed. Little did they know, a tempest was brewing in Pharaoh's heart, and God was preparing to display his judgments, as his people stood on the brink of divine deliverance. The promises of God would soon manifest in ways that would echo throughout generations, embedding in the very fabric of Israel's identity. For the time was drawing near when redemption would rise like the dawn, and soon they would know the depth of God's unwavering love and the breadth of his sovereign grace. As dawn broke upon the land, the shadows of despair began to lift, replaced by the promise of deliverance. The heart of Israel, oppressed and weary, beat anew with the hope stirred in the depths of their faith. God, true to his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, was moving in unprecedented ways to orchestrate their liberation from bondage. After a series of plagues, each a testament to God's unmatched power and consuming justice, Pharaoh's heart remained like stone, refusing to bend to the will of the Almighty. Yet, within the corridors of his palace, an apprehension began to stir, echoing the fear permeating the air of Egypt. The final act of divine intervention was upon them, and the weight of heaven's decree hung in the balance. "Go, tell the children of Israel to prepare a lamb for sacrifice," Moses instructed Aaron as the air thickened with tension. "For tonight, the angel of the Lord will pass over, and the firstborn of Egypt shall perish while those marked by the blood shall be spared." With resolute hearts, the people moved swiftly, spreading the commands of the Lord, preparing for the evening that would change their fates forever. As twilight descended and the sun dipped below the horizon, families gathered, hearts pounding with a mixture of dread and hope. They painted their doorposts with the blood of the Lamb, a sign of covenant, a threshold between life and death. In that moment, each family stood united no longer as individuals ensnared by despair, but as a collective body, prepared for the promise of freedom. The night swallowed the land in silence. And then, in the depth of darkness, the cries of anguish erupted like thunder. The hand of God swept over Egypt, bringing forth judgment that was both a warning and a merciful invitation to repentance. Pharaoh, waking to the wails of his own household, was shattered by the weight of loss. Yet it was in this breaking that God's will unfolded. Despairing and desperate, Pharaoh summoned Moses, his heart now softened by sorrow. "Rise, go from among my people, you and the children of Israel, and serve the Lord as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds and be gone. And bless me also." In this moment of chaos, God's purpose had triumphed. The chains that bound his people were shattered as dawn broke once more. The Israelites embarked upon their journey with determined hearts and feet set toward the wilderness, each step resonating with the promise nestled deep within their souls. They had witnessed the hand of God, and their faith ignited a fire that would fuel their passage through trials yet unseen. But the journey was not without its challenges. The Red Sea loomed before them, an insurmountable barrier. Behind them, the dust of Pharaoh's chariots thundered like an approaching storm. Fear threatened to extinguish the flickering flame of hope, and the people murmured against Moses. "Have you brought us out here to die?" they cried, their voices trembling with doubt. Yet Moses, anchored in the strength of the Almighty, lifted his eyes. "Fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today," he proclaimed boldly, his spirit resonating with renewed faith. As he raised his staff over the raging waters, the winds of heaven began to stir. The sea parted, the waters forming walls on either side, a miracle that proclaimed God's sovereignty over creation itself as Israel walked upon dry ground. They crossed through the threshold of agony into the embrace of freedom, leaving a life of sorrow behind them. Yet God had not only freed them from chains. He was leading them toward a destiny woven into the very fabric of time. With each step they took, faith solidified their path, and hope blazed a new trail through the wilderness. Once across, Miriam, the sister of Moses, led the women of Israel in song, her voice ringing through the air. "I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Their voices lifted like incense to the heavens, a response of gratitude that reverberated with the praises of a liberated people. And so, the Exodus began a journey fraught with challenges and growth, yet threaded by divine promise and providence. Each trial was met by God's grace. Each hunger was satisfied by his provision. The heavens opened, and manna fell like dew upon the earth. Water surged forth from the rock, revitalizing the weary spirits of his people. Day by day they learned to trust and depend on him, their faith forged in the crucible of need. As the Israelites drew closer to the mountain of Sinai, they stood on the brink of a new covenant, a divine invitation to walk in holiness and purpose as his chosen people. God called to Moses from the mountain, enveloping him in smoke and glory. "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be a special treasure to me above all people." Here, before the great display of God's majesty, the Israelites were invited into a relationship deep with meaning, a covenant sealed with his love. This moment marked the turning point for Israel. They were no longer just freed slaves, but a nation called to be a light to the nations, embodying the redemptive story written by the hand of the Almighty. The journey ahead would be long, and the lessons hard, but they were now a people defined not by their past, but by the glory of God who called them his own. They would learn to worship, to obey, and to walk in the ways of the Lord. The path of obedience would open doors of promise, and as clouds gathered and storms of trials beckoned, their hearts would beat with faith, forever molded by the hand of their God. And thus, the story of deliverance echoes through the ages, a testament to God's unfailing love and sovereign grace, an invitation into a relationship that beckons all of humanity to trust in his perfect plan. Through trials and triumphs, through loss and restoration, his purposes prevail, reminding us that even in the darkest hours, hope remains steadfast for all who believe. Oh, dear friends, let this story ignite your faith as you pursue the depths of God's love. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and witness the unfolding of more powerful biblical stories in your life. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Leave a like now, and let's amplify God's message far and wide through the mighty algorithm of his love. I invite you to comment your spiritual reflections on this miraculous journey and how it has impacted your faith. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. For the harvest is plentiful, and the call is clear. Let us echo the glory of his deliverance together.